The Cailleach, Part 1, The Hag of Ages. In the beginning, before the names of gods were carved in stone, before men built towers to the sky, there was an old woman. Not just any old woman, but the oldest. A figure with hair as grey as storm clouds, skin as pale as a winter sky, and eyes that froze the land wherever she looked. She is called the Cailleach, the Veiled One, the Hag, the Mother of Storms and the Sculptor of Mountains. She has outlived empires, outlasted saints, and watched generations come and go like snowflakes on the wind. Some call her a goddess, others a demon, others still a giantess who shaped the very bones of the earth. But perhaps she is all of these things at once. Tonight, we will walk in her shadow. From the rocky shores of Spain to the mist-cloaked mountains of Scotland, from the megalithic temples of Malta to the windswept isles of Ireland, we follow the trail of a figure who has haunted Europe for more than 2,000 years. And be warned, if the wind begins to howl outside your window as we speak, well, it may just be the old hag herself, reminding you she's still here. The origins of the hag. At first glance, you might think the Cailleach belongs firmly to Celtic myth, that her story begins and ends in Ireland, Scotland, or the Isle of Man. But her trail leads much further back, into lands where the Celts themselves were born. 2,500 years ago, ancient writers described tribes on the Iberian Peninsula, in what is now Spain and Portugal, who bore a strange name, the Cailleach. Fierce, wild and proud, their women were said to give birth in the fields while working, and, if threatened with slavery, to kill their children rather than let them fall into Roman hands. These people, some suggest, took their name from the Cailleach herself. Imagine it, entire tribes defined not by a warrior chief or king, but by an ancient hag goddess. Their land was known as Cailleach, which eventually became Galicia. Even the name of Portugal may echo her shadow from the ancient port of Portas Caille, an entire nation haunted by a hag. From Spain, the Celts carried her northwards, across the sea into Ireland, and from there into Scotland. The Irish myths speak of invasions from the Iberian coast, of settlers who came with their gods and their stories. Among them, perhaps, was the old woman herself, hidden behind veils of myth. Echoes from Malta, but her story may be older still. On the island of Gozo, just off Malta, stand temples so ancient they make the pyramids look like new architecture. The locals tell of a giantess named Sansuna who built them in a single night, carrying the great stones in her apron and setting them in place with supernatural strength. Sound familiar? It should. The Cailleach is forever dropping rocks from her apron, scattering hills and mountains across the land. It's tempting, perhaps too tempting, to see Sansunas a distant cousin, or even an early form of the Cailleach herself. When the mysterious builders of Malta vanished 4,000 years ago, did their legends sail north with them? Did the Hag of the Stones find new soil in which to plant her stories? The Irish manuscripts. The first time the Cailleach appears by name is in Irish writings of the early Middle Ages. The 9th century lament of the Old Woman of Bear presents a figure both powerful and tragic, a woman who's lived through countless ages, even surviving the Great Flood, now lamenting her lost youth and lost lovers. She is ancient beyond reckoning, old enough to remember the beginning of time, yet still here, still muttering her grief. In other texts, she is said to have birthed 50 children by 7 husbands, becoming the mother of all tribes of the world. Imagine that, humanity itself born not from a shining god or radiant goddess, but from a weary, wrinkled crone who'd seen it all before. And in the shadows of those stories we glimpse her dual nature. Sometimes benevolent, shaping the land for humankind. Sometimes terrifying, a bringer of winter and famine. Always, however, she is there, old, primal, inescapable. The hag's many names. One reason the Cailleach is so difficult to pin down is that she wears many names, as many as the lands and hills she shaped. In Ireland, she is Cailleach Beara. In Scotland, she becomes Beara, or the Cailleach-Ancient, sharp and biting as frost. On the Isle of Man, she is Cailleach-Ancient, the Lady of Gloom. Elsewhere, she is Nickniven, the Gaia Carling, the great hag of the deer, the hag of the moors. Sometimes she is one being. Sometimes a class of beings, an entire sisterhood of storm hags who roam the mountains, conferring blessings or curses as they please. In some tales, she is the queen of fairies. In others, a cannibal giantess. In still others, she merges with Christian saints, or is painted as a demon. The veil she wears is not just a cloak, it is a mask of endless disguises. Goddess, spirit, or priestess? But here we face the question, what was she truly? A goddess of the ancient Celts? A wandering nature spirit? Or something more human? Perhaps a memory of priestesses who once walked the hills? Some scholars have suggested that the Cailleach may not have begun as a deity at all, but as a title for wise women, guardians of wells, keepers of the herds, priestesses of the earth. Over time, their powers grew in the telling until they became giants, shapers of mountains, keepers of storms. It is not hard to imagine. Picture an ancient sisterhood of veiled women, feared and respected, who knew the secrets of the land, who blessed hunters or cursed them, who kept the waters flowing. As centuries passed, their order faded, but the stories endured, transforming women into legend, legend into myth, and myth into a goddess who could not die. In truth, perhaps the Cailleach is all these things. Goddess and giantess, spirit and priestess. A figure born from the awe of humanity when confronted with nature's power. Storm, flood, mountain, winter. The Eternal Hag. What makes the Cailleach so enduring is not simply her age, but her adaptability. Wherever the Celts went, she followed. Wherever the land was harsh and the winters long, there she appeared. And wherever people needed an explanation for the jagged landscapes around them, they saw her hand at work, dropping stones, building mountains, unleashing floods. She was old when the Romans came. She was old when the Christian monks wrote their Gospels. She was old when witches were burned and saints were canonized. And she is old still, carried on the wind, her stories whispered in the crackle of winter fires. The hag does not die. She only changes her mask. The Cailleach. Part 2. Earthshaper and Water Witch. The hag who built the land. Across the British Isles, if you see a mountain, a loch, or even a peculiar stone lying in a field, someone somewhere will whisper, "That was the Cailleach." She is remembered as a giantess who walked the land with her apron full of rocks. Whenever the strings snapped, or whenever a sailor brushed too close to her thighs, as one bawdy Scottish tale insists, the stones tumbled out, forming mountains, islands, and hills. A crude accident to us, but an act of divine creation to ancient people. One such mishap, they say, formed the island of Ailsa Craig. As she waded through the sea, apron heavy with stones, a passing sailor's mast brushed her most intimate parts. With a shocked cry, she spilled her load, and where it splashed into the waves, a rocky island rose. Not exactly the story you hear in school geography. Elsewhere, she shaped the valleys of Rossshire when her basket broke, scattering earth and boulders into new hills. She is said to have formed Loch Ness itself, cursing a girl named Nessa into becoming its waters when she failed her duty. And Loch Awe too was born when the hag fell asleep, forgetting to cap the well on the summit of Ben Cruachan. The water poured out in fury, drowning villages, until the valley below became a vast lake. Stricken with grief, the Cailleach turned herself to stone in penance, her stiffened body still visible in the crags. To us, these are legends, but to early peoples, they were explanations. How else to understand the chaotic shapes of the earth, except as the handiwork of a power beyond human? The Cailleach was geology made flesh. Stones of the Old Woman. In Scotland, stones bearing her name still stand. The Carlin stones, the Hag's Chair, the Cailleach of the moors. Some align with the moon, as at Callanish, where once every 18 years the full moon rises between the stone hag's knees, as though she is birthing the night sky itself. On the Hill of the Witch in Ireland, cairns mark the path where she leapt from hill to hill, dropping stones as part of a spell that might have granted her power over the land. But she fell on her last leap, breaking her neck. Her body, they say, lies beneath the earth still. In these cairns and stones we glimpse more than myth. We see memory. Perhaps of Neolithic builders, long forgotten. Perhaps of priestesses shaping sacred landscapes. Whatever the truth, the people remembered her, carving her presence into every stone that could not otherwise be explained. The hag beyond the Isles. Her reach extended beyond Ireland and Scotland. In Yorkshire, England, an old woman's well and old woman's mound once bore her memory. A Roman road was said to be built by Wade's wife, a giantess carrying stones in her apron, surely another shadow of the hag. In Wales, at Barclodiad y Gawres, literally the apron full of the giantess, tombs were said to have been formed when a giantess dropped her stones. In Brittany, in Jersey, even in Norway, we find echoes of her apron, her stones, her world-shaping strength. In Norway, she even gains a Norse accent, remembered as Having carried the rocks that formed Scotland's highlands. There she becomes kin to the frost giants of Jotunheim and to Gefjon, who ploughed an island from the Swedish coast. Everywhere she went, she carried her apron, and everywhere the stones fell. Mistress of waters, but the Cailleach was not only shaper of stone, she was mistress of waters. Water was sacred to the Celts, a liminal force, a gateway between worlds. Wells and springs were guarded, rivers personified, lakes feared and revered. And who better to embody this shifting, perilous element than the old hag herself? The lament of the old woman of Bear links her with the Great Flood, claiming she survived when others perished. Later tales give her charge of sacred wells, capping and uncapping them to control fertility and disaster. When she forgot, or when anger overcame her, the waters burst forth, flooding the land. In Scotland, her spit was said to form Loch Lomond. Elsewhere, her wand could whip up storms or summon rain. On the Isle of Man, she determined the year's weather by whether she left her house to gather sticks on her day. If February 1st was fine, it meant she would stockpile fuel for a long, bitter season. If storm kept her indoors, spring would come early. Farmers prayed for storms that day, hoping the hag would stay home. The Whirlpool Cauldron. Most terrifying of all is her whirlpool, the Corrib off the coast of Scotland. Its very name means cauldron of the ploughed, for the Cailleach was said to wash her great checkered cloak in its furious waters. When the cloak was white, winter came, blanketing the land in snow. To sailors, the whirlpool was death itself, a churning maw that could swallow ships whole. They listened for its signs: foam, meaning she was stirring her laundry; thunderous roars, meaning she had sneezed. Neither was good news. Even today, the Corrib is among the most dangerous whirlpools in the world. Few would doubt that an ancient goddess of storms might still linger there, beating her cloak against the waves. Guardians of the wells and springs across Ireland and Scotland were tied to her name. Some were watched over by crones who alone knew the rituals to keep them from overflowing. As late as the 18th century, islanders in the Hebrides spoke of two old women who possessed secret knowledge of a sacred well. If they neglected the ritual, storms would drown the island. Even in the 20th century, people whispered of sightings of the hag washing herself in mountain wells. In living memory, shepherds and gamekeepers still feared the Cailleach lurking by the waters. The hag of storms everywhere, she was the stormbringer. The sailors of Cromarty called her Gentle Annie, hoping to flatter her into calmness. But they knew the truth. When sudden gales struck, it was the hag's hand. In some traditions, she even marries the sea god Manannan, uniting storm and tide. Together they ruled the waters, capricious and cruel, blessing or drowning as they pleased. The Cailleach is never tame. She is not a gentle guardian of springs, but a being who may bless one day and destroy the next. Wells, rivers, floods, whirlpools, all are hers. The dark elemental. If the Cailleach of stones is a figure of permanence, carving mountains that last millennia, then the Cailleach of waters is her opposite, fluid, unstable, forever changing. She is both stability and chaos, rock and flood, land and storm. Together, these dual aspects show why she is so feared and so enduring. She is the land beneath our feet and the storm above our heads. The Eternal Hag who both gives and takes away. The Cailleach, Part 3, Crone of Winter, Lady of Beasts, and Shapeshifter, the Crone of Winter. If the Cailleach is known for anything above all, it is winter. When the days shorten and the winds grow sharp, when the ground hardens and the animals starve, it is said that she walks abroad. From Samhain, the festival of the dead at the end of October, until Beltane in May, she rules the land. In Scotland, she is Bera, Queen of Winter. Her face is blue with cold, her teeth red with blood, her hair as white as snow. She carries a staff of blackthorn, and wherever it strikes, the grass withers, the rivers freeze, and the land turns toiron beneath her feet. Each year she renews her youth by drinking from the well of youth at Beltane. But for the long months of winter, she remains the withered hag. Her reign is harsh. She hurls storms against the mountains, unleashes blizzards across the fields, and keeps spring locked in her icy grip. The people feared her, but they also respected her. For winter is cruel yet necessary. Without its death, there can be no rebirth. The Cailleach is not simply an enemy of life, but a guardian of the cycle itself. Battle with the maiden, yet her reign is never eternal. For every hag there is a maiden, and for every winter a spring. In the stories of Scotland and Ireland, the Cailleach is forever opposed by Brigid, the bright goddess of poetry, healing, and the hearthfire. Every year they battle for the right to rule. When the Cailleach throws down snow, Brigid pushes back with warmth. When the hag hurls her staff into rivers to unleash floods, Brigid answers with sunlight and growth. Some tales make them enemies, others sisters, even two faces of the same being. Old woman and young woman, locked in eternal struggle or eternal balance. On Imbolc, February 1st, Brigid's day, the hag takes her measure. If the weather is bright, she is gathering wood to prolong her winter reign. If storms howl, she cannot go outside, and thus spring will come early. It is Groundhog Day with rather higher stakes. The struggle is cosmic, but also intimate. Every year the hag grows old and weary. Every year she must relinquish her rule to the maiden. And every year she drinks from the well of youth, beginning the cycle anew. It is the oldest story of all, death and rebirth, darkness and light, winter yielding to spring. The wolf rider winter is not only snow and storm, but hunger. And the hag's beasts walk with her. In some stories, she rides across the hills on a wolf, leading packs of howling hounds to harry the night. In others, she is followed by wild boars or rides a chariot pulled by monstrous animals. But most often she is the mistress of deer. In Scotland, she is remembered as the great hag of the deer. Hunters who wished for success would leave offerings at her stones. It was she who herded the deer across the mountains, deciding who would live and who would die. Sometimes she appeared as a woman with a herd of white deer, leading them across the misty slopes. To follow her was to find the hunt. To anger her was to find nothing but empty hills. In Ireland, she was linked to cattle, guardian of herds, both blessing and cursing farmers. To some she granted abundance, to others she brought starvation. The hag is no gentle shepherdess. She is wildness itself, raw nature untamed. To befriend her is dangerous, but to ignore her is worse. Lady of Beasts. This role links her to a deeper archetype, the Lady of Beasts found across cultures. A primal goddess who commands the animals, who holds life and death in her hands. But while others appear as maidens or queens, crowned and radiant, the Cailleach keeps the form of the hag. She is winter, not summer. Death, not life. And yet, even in this, she embodies balance. For without death, there can be no birth. Without winter, no spring. Without hunger, no feast. She is the Lady of Beasts because she is the Lady of Nature itself, red in tooth and claw, merciless yet just. The shapeshifter. The Cailleach is not always old. She is a shapeshifter, as many of the ancient powers are. At times, she becomes a beautiful maiden, radiant as the dawn. Hunters who meet her may see a woman of impossible allure, offering gifts or demanding loyalty. Kings who stumble across her may be asked to kiss the hag, only to find her transformed into a shining young queen. This, too, is part of the sovereignty tradition. The ruler must embrace the land in all its forms, not only when it is fertile and green, but when it is barren and cold. The king who rejects the hag rejects the earth itself. Only the one who accepts her, even in her ugliness, is rewarded with her beauty, and with sovereignty over the land. In other tales, she turns to stone, becoming part of the very landscape. Hills are said to be her sleeping body, crags her bones, cairns her frozen form. The hag who made the mountains may at any moment become one. She shifts into animals too, a crow, a raven, a crane, birds of death and omen. To see her in such forms was to know that change was coming, that winter was near, that life was about to turn. She is fluid, not fixed. Hag and maiden, giantess and bird, human and stone. In her transformations we see again the cycle of life and death, youth and age, beauty and decay. The eternal cycle, this power of transformation is why the Cailleach endures. She is never bound to one form. She is not merely a crone to be pitied, nor a giantess to be feared. She is all forms, all seasons, all cycles. She is the storm and the calm, the hag and the maiden, the death and the rebirth. Perhaps this is why she remains so compelling. We recognize in her the truths of existence, that all beauty fades but may be renewed, that all power wanes but may be reborn, that life itself is only a cycle, spiraling ever onward, like the seasons she governs. The Cailleach, Part 4, Sovereignty, Doom and Legacy. The sovereignty of the hag in Celtic tradition, kingship was never simply a matter of bloodline or conquest. It was a marriage between king and land, ruler and soil, and the land itself was embodied in the form of a woman. Sometimes she appeared as a radiant maiden, sometimes as a withered crone. The test was always the same. Would the would-be king accept her? Would he drink from her cup, kiss her lips, embrace her, even in her hideousness? The most famous tale tells of Niall of the 9 hostages, who encountered an old hag by a well. She offered water, but only if he would kiss her. His brothers recoiled, refusing her in disgust. But Niall embraced her, and as he did, she transformed into a beautiful maiden, the sovereignty of Ireland herself. By accepting the hag, he earned the crown. This at heart is the lesson of the Cailleach. To rule, you must accept both sides of the land. The fertile and the barren, the beautiful and the hideous, the harvest and the hunger. Only in embracing the hag can you claim the maiden. Only in kissing winter do you earn the spring. The hag of doom, but the Cailleach is not always a giver of crowns. She is also a harbinger of death. In Scotland she appears as Nicnavan, the Gyre Carling, a witch queen who rides with a spectral host on stormy nights, summoning spirits and commanding the dead. In later times, she was conflated with Hecate, Diana, even the devil himself. In Ireland, she sometimes appears at the moment of death, shrieking like the banshee, foretelling the end of kings and heroes. A sighting of her could mean famine, storm, or disaster. In Leicestershire, she became Black Annis, a blue-faced hag who lurked in caves, devouring children and flaying their skins to hang as trophies. Even in Christianized folklore, her image remained twisted, dark, monstrous. Whether as goddess or demon, her role was the same, to remind humanity of its fragility, to whisper that no crown lasts forever, no hearthfire burns eternally, no flesh resists the chill of winter. The eternal crone. In the end, the Cailleach is more than a goddess of one land. She is the embodiment of an archetype found everywhere, the crone. The crone is wisdom and age, but also decay and terror. She is the witch at the edge of the village, the ogress in the cave, the storm that destroys the harvest. She is Baba Yaga in Russia, Hecate in Greece, the Norns in Scandinavia.
Everywhere we find her, the old woman who is feared, shunned, but never forgotten.
She is the truth of age, the truth of death, the truth of winter.
She is what awaits all beauty, all youth, all power.
The face none of us wish to see in the mirror, yet all of us must. And yet she is also hope. For the hag does not remain forever.
The hag in the modern world today, the Cailleach still walks among us, if only in story.
Folklorists record her presence in place names, in cairns, in wells where offerings were left into the last century. Neo-pagans revere her as a goddess of transformation and survival, a patron of wise women and witches. Writers and artists invoke her as symbol, storm, spirit. Fantasy novels whisper her name. Musicians sing of her. She is never far, never gone, always waiting for the right wind to blow her cloak across the sky. She is not gone. She will never be gone. When the nights grow long and the wind rattles your windows, she is still there. Watching, waiting, whispering. And if you listen closely, perhaps you will hear her laughter, harsh as the winter wind. The laughter of the hag who has outlived us all.
If you've enjoyed this journey into the shadowed myths of the Cailleach, the Eternal Hag of Winter, don't let her vanish into silence.
Like this video, share it with those who walk the misty paths of legend, and subscribe for more tales from the dark and the forgotten. The old stories survive only if we keep telling them. So join me, and together, let's keep the fire burning against the storm.